Cool. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Devvrat. I'm the Senior Assistant Dean of International Admissions here at Reed College, and really excited to chat with you all and kind of get to tell you more about the application process. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is really broad, and this is designed for sort of people who are in all levels of the college search process. Maybe you're not a senior right now, you're just getting started in the search process, or maybe you're a current senior. You're still narrowing down your college searches, and you're not sure, where to go, or what things to look out for. And so that's what this session is designed to do. It's a very broad session. So while I'm offering it here from Reed College, the session itself is pretty broad and can be applied to a variety of institutions that you're looking at, and we're going to pose questions at you and help you kind of think about your college search process in a different way. I'd imagine you'll probably have questions throughout the session, so feel free to throw your questions into the chat box. If you wiggle your mouse around at the bottom, there's a chat box. Click on that, and then feel free to put your questions in there. You can send it to me directly, or send it to everyone, and I will go through and answer those questions at the end. Um, but awesome, that being said, let me share my screen. Oh, 1 second. Gotta move things around. There we go. Present. Well, let's go all the way to the beginning. Awesome. Anyways, like I said, my name is Dev. I use he, him pronouns, and really excited to chat with you all. This is one of my favorite scenes in the Hobbit movies. So I knew I had to use it for some presentation someday. And when I put this together, I was like, I know exactly where I'm going to use this. But basically, we're going to break this session down into four different areas to think of as you're making your college choices: reflect, research, apply, and decide. Um, your college experience is the entire college process is a big adventure, right? And there's lots of different pieces to it, and you might not even know where to start and what things to consider. And so that's what this session was designed to do. So, as you're looking at colleges, the first thing you want to do is reflect, right? What kind of college experience are you looking for? There are all kinds of colleges out there. Are you looking for a really big school that has like 30,000 people and like school spirit is a huge thing at that institution? Are you looking for a smaller college where community is a really big aspect of that institution? There are pros and cons to both for sure. And so kind of thinking about what is it that you prefer. I'm very much a list maker. Anytime I need to make a big decision, I will make a pros and cons list, right? What are the things that I need to consider about this? Just to get on a piece of paper and just brainstorming helps me kind of wrap my mind around it. So that's sort of what I'm, suggesting you all do as you're making these decisions, is to start writing these things down. Maybe you don't know the answer. Maybe you don't know if you want a big school or a small school, or maybe you don't care. That's information right there that you should write down. And of course, this list is not set in stone, right? This is very flexible. You can go back and change things and erase things or redo things. But the point is, you are creating an opportunity for yourself where you are taking the time to write these things down and try to get an understanding of what it is that you're looking for. Other things to think about: what kind of major are you looking for, right? What kind of program of study are you looking for? A lot of colleges offer a lot of similar majors. So there's comparing, well, how does your major differ from the major at this other school? What kind of opportunities will I get your major at this major, this program at your school versus another school? Um, think about like research opportunities. Is research important to you? Is it important that you're going to a research school? Or is it important that you're going to a liberal arts school with a research component? Or a big, like I said, a big research institution where that's their main focus. These are the kinds of things that you want to think about as well. Um, how about diversity? You know, are there international students on campus? Where are these students coming from? What about other identities of the people within your institution? Are you seeing people who have similar identities at that school? And not just the students, but take a look at faculty and staff, right? Are there professors that look like you? Are there professors that share identities to you? Will you be comfortable being your full and authentic self while you're at that school? These are all things that you want to definitely think about as you are narrowing down your school list. Once you've thought about what is it that you're looking for out of a school, that's when you start to do the research, right? Now that you've had this list of colleges, what resources does that school have to offer you? Is there international student support services available? A lot of colleges have international student services offices that will help you navigate the visa process or help you acclimate from wherever country you're coming from into the US and help with the culture shock. Sometimes there's a mentorship program. Sometimes there's programs where we'll take students out to explore the city. What kind of resources are available for you as an international student to help bridge that transition? We recognize that's a big change. Some of you are coming to the US for the very first time, and that's to go to college. So not only is college a big change for you, but the country that you're in is a big change for you. Do you know someone who is currently studying in the US or even studying at that school? You know, what was their experience like? Now, keep in mind, every student's experience is going to be different, but that's a really great baseline to get, is understanding what does that transition experience look like for you? What kind of application requirements are there for international students? A lot of colleges, the international application and the domestic application process are very different. So thinking about what is it that I need to prepare ahead of time before I submit my application to that college. Keep in mind things like letters of recommendation or testing. Those things take time. So how do you plan ahead to make sure you have those things secure by the time you're ready to do those applications, because those deadlines come up really quickly. What other materials might you need? What does financial aid look like? Does that school offer international students financial aid? Do you need to gather documents for that financial aid application? What are those documents that you need to gather? Make sure you give yourself enough time to find that out. You know, we talked a little bit about campus culture, but thinking about what does the culture around the college look like off campus, right? Is this am I in a welcoming city? Am I in a college where the college is the biggest thing that's happening in that town? And are the people around, you know, in the neighboring neighborhoods, are they welcoming? What kind of culture does that city or that town have? What does housing look like? That's another big question, right? Does the college guarantee housing for you? Is there housing that is only for international students, or is everybody mixed? Is housing guaranteed for you as an international student for all 4 years? So these are all kinds of questions that you want to research and start thinking about. And there's lots of people to ask these questions, right? Contact your admissions counselor. These are the questions that I'm posing to you are questions that I answer for students on a daily basis about READ. You can connect with current students. There are international students that you can talk to. There are domestic students that you can talk to. There are students within the major that you're looking at that you can talk to. These are great ways to have these conversations and understand the perspective of that school from multiple people, right? I tell students all the time, I would love to talk about Reed. I will talk to you about Reed for hours and hours if you let me, but I never went to Reed. I was never a Reed student. So I can't tell you what the Reed perspective, what the perspective of a student is. But that's where I'll connect you with one of my interns or one of our student workers and have you chat with them and connect with them and talk about what is that student experience like? And do colleges offer that opportunity? Do they offer workshops like this where you can come ask questions or ways for you to connect with current students? So those are the things that you want to take a look at as well. Once you sort of have all that stuff figured out, that's when you're ready to do the applications and apply, right? There's all kinds of application formats. The two most common ones that you'll most likely see are the Common App and the Coalition App. But some colleges also have their own institutional application. Usually most colleges don't care which ones you use. At Reed, we don't care which application you use. They're all the same to us. If you've never heard of the Common App or the Coalition App, these are two application systems that allow you to apply to multiple schools at the same time. So you don't have to do, 10 different applications to 10 different schools that you're applying to. You do one application, select all the schools that you want to send the application to, and it'll send it over to those schools, as long as those schools are a Common App school or a coalition school. Read is both. And then think about what kind of components that you'll need to submit once you've submitted your application, right? Do you need to submit transcripts? Make sure you check with the college too. Do they allow you to submit the transcripts? Or does your school need to submit those transcripts? Or a guidance counselor need to submit those transcripts? If your school doesn't have a guidance counselor, who can you ask to submit those transcripts on your behalf? Very few colleges will let students submit those official documents. Usually they have to come from the official source, Reed included. When you submit your transcripts, we have to have them come from the school directly to us. And those transcripts and those other documents can be uploaded to your application. They can be emailed. Usually we're pretty flexible. Think about essays. How many essays does that college require you to answer? A lot of colleges, it's pretty traditional, especially those more rigorous liberal arts schools. You traditionally have 2 to 3, maybe 4 essays to write. If you apply for any of the UC schools, the University of California schools, I don't believe they have essays, but instead they have a lot of short answer prompts where you write a couple of paragraphs, but there's like 10 of them. So make sure you're looking at it ahead of time and then getting those prepared. Think about supplemental essays as well. The most common supplemental essay you'll see is why this college. So, why Whitman, why Lewis and Clark. The Reed supplemental essay is a little bit different. So we got rid of the why question a long time ago. And instead what we decided was to do what we call the Paideia essay. So what the Paideia essay at Reed is, so Paideia is actually a real event every January between our fall and spring semester. And essentially it's an opportunity for students, staff, faculty to apply to teach a class on any subject that they want or on any topic that they want. And yeah, when I say any topic, I mean literally any topic. We've seen everything from the history of comic books to underwater basket weaving, to slavery in America, to how to be a drag queen. There was a virtual napping class this last year. I was so bummed to miss it. I will take any excuse to take a nap. And unfortunately, I had a meeting at that same time, which is the irony of this. But basically what the Paideia essay is asking you is if you were selected to teach a class, what would you teach and why is essentially what the prompt is. What we're trying to get at with this question is what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What do you want to share with others? And what we're not looking for is you don't need to submit like a course description and required reading material and none of that. You can write a traditional essay, introduction, body, conclusion, and just tell us what is it that you want to teach? How would you teach that? And why is that important to you? There is a 500-word limit, so just something to keep in mind there. But really, this is just a really great way for us to get to know you, the things that you're excited about. Take a look at what test score requirements those colleges require as well. Lots of schools are going test optional, test blind, test flexible. So if you're not familiar with these terminologies, test optional is if you took the SAT or the ACT and you would like to submit your score, it's optional, you're welcome to. If you do submit your score, they'll look at it and use that to assess your application. If you did not take the SAT or ACT, or if you took it and you didn't like your score, you don't have to send it. And that they won't look at it, obviously. They'll look at other parts of your application. Test blind, which is what READ is, means that even if you took the SATs or ACTs, even if you send us your scores, we will not use it to assess your application. So in an effort to be fair to everybody, because we recognize some people have access to the SAT and ACT, some people didn't. In order to just be fair to everybody, we decided we were going to be test blind and not look at test scores at all for any student. And that's referring to the SAT or ACT. We'll talk about English proficiency in just a second. Then there's test flexible. A test flexible school is they want to see some sort of testing, but they don't care what that testing is. It could be the SAT, it could be the ACT, it could be IB scores or AP scores or A levels or O levels. It could be any number of these tests. They don't care what you said, they just want to see some sort of testing. So that's what test flexible is. So then you want to think about English proficiency testing. What requirements does that school have? Most schools will have some sort of requirement of sending and testing. READ requires either the Duolingo, the IELTS, or the TOEFL. You're welcome to submit SAT and ACT as a substitute for English proficiency. It's not my favorite, if I'm being real honest with you, but we'll accept it if that's what you have. I'll work around it and I'll work with that. But otherwise, our preference is TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. There's no, for READ specifically, we have no minimum score requirement. If you look on the international application guide on the website, I've listed some scores. Those are not minimum requirements. Those are just the average scores that we get. I've admitted plenty of students who scored below that, and I have not admitted plenty of students who have scored above that. These are not required numbers. These are just to kind of give you an idea of what our average scores are. Those average scores, you'll notice, are fairly high, so don't let that freak you out. But these are just the averages. And like I mentioned, we have students who've scored less than that and have still been successful at READ. And so if those aren't your scores, I still encourage you to apply and send in those scores. And then don't forget about keeping up with those deadlines. Every college sort of does deadlines in their own way. There's all kinds of application rounds that you'll apply through. There's early action, there's early decision, there's regular decision. Those are probably the three most common ones that you'll hear about. Let me give you just a quick breakdown of what those each mean. I'll start with regular. Regular decision is January 20th. This is basically your final opportunity to apply to the college. You apply by January 15th. I think that's the 20th, but I meant January 15th. And by April 1st, you'll hear back from us with a decision. And you have until May 1st to make a decision on which college you want to go to, right? So all of these colleges, you're going to apply to all of these colleges. All of these colleges are going to send you their decision, and then you don't have to make a decision until whatever deadlines those colleges set. Most colleges require you to make a decision by May 1st. That's most colleges. Some colleges will do May 15th, but most colleges are May 1st. That's called National Decision Day. It's like a national holiday. I don't know if it's an official, an unofficial holiday that most colleges observe. And that's why we have very similar deadlines when it comes to that final deadline. Then there's early action and early decision. Both of these are opportunities for you to apply early and get an early response back from us. The difference is early decision is a binding agreement. whereas early action is not. So if you apply to a school early decision, what you were telling that school is, if you admit me, I will 100% go to that school because this is my number one choice. And that's what early decision is. Early decision is a great opportunity for you to apply early, get an early response back. It's a great way for you to show your level of commitment to the school. And because you're showing us that level of commitment, we try to honor that. And so our acceptance rates during early decision are a little bit higher. Does that mean that you're automatically going to be admitted just because you apply early decision? Absolutely not. But we do take that into consideration as a piece of the decision process. Early action, you can apply to as many colleges as you want, early action, whereas early decision, you're limited to one college, and there's no agreement. So early decision and early action have the same deadline. It's November 15th, which is coming up here in a few weeks. But you'll get your early decision 1 response by mid-December. You'll get your early action decision response by early to mid-February. So the benefit of applying through early action is you'll hear from us by February, and you still have until May 1 to make a decision. So you've now got all of this time to make a decision, as opposed to only 1 month to make a decision. And 1 month sounds like enough time, but think about this. You probably haven't visited some of these colleges, so you might want to do a visit if that's feasible for you. You may want to ask some questions of the admissions office or the financial aid office. You might want to talk to a current student. Maybe you want to shadow a class. All of these things book up really fast. And so if you only have a month to do all of these things and make a decision, you're competing against a lot of other people who are doing the same thing. Whereas if you do it early action, you've got almost 4 or 5 months to make a decision. And that gives you plenty of time to do the research and to look into all the schools and really take your time before you make this really big and important decision. Financial aid deadlines, don't forget, those can be often are on the same deadlines as the application. So at Reed, for international students, we require the CSS profile, and those CSS profile is due at the same time as the application deadline. So if you apply early decision, we need the CSS profile by that same November 15th deadline. If you apply regular decision, we need it by that same, that January 15th regular decision deadline. Some schools are what we call need aware. Some schools are what we call need blind. So a school that's need blind means that they don't look at your financial aid status while they review your application. The decision of whether they're going to admit you or not has nothing to do with your financial aid status. Need aware schools do take into consideration your financial aid situation. Traditionally, schools that offer more generous financial aid packages will usually be need aware, because in order for them to be generous with the financial aid, they also have to balance a budget. Reed is in the same exact boat. Reed has some of the most generous financial aid packages out of most colleges in the US. But in an effort to be able to do that and to provide access to education for students who may not be able to feasibly do that because of the cost, we do also have to balance a budget and still be able to keep the lights on and pay our bills and pay employees and all of that. And so we do have to balance that budget. Now for Reed specifically, is your financial aid going to make or break your application? Absolutely not. We do a holistic review of every application, and we look at the application as a whole. If you've been in any other session I've ever done, you might have heard me make the reference, or talk about the puzzle metaphor that I like to use a lot. I like to think about the application as a puzzle. So your job as a student is to give me all this information, right? Your transcripts, your essays, your application, your financial aid application. My job as an admissions counselor is to put these puzzle pieces together to see what is that full picture. Now, if we're missing information, like we're missing an essay or we're missing a transcript or we're missing a financial aid application, that means there's one puzzle piece missing. Now, that one puzzle piece is no more important than any of the other puzzle pieces, but by missing that puzzle piece, we don't have a full picture, and there's a hole in that picture. That's why every puzzle piece is important to the greater picture, but no puzzle piece is more important than the next piece. So hopefully that makes sense. And so that's sort of where financial aid comes from there. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about financial aid if you'd like, but that's just things to think about when you're doing these applications. Oops. Awesome. Then once you've submitted all your applications, your job is to sit back and wait until you hear back from us. And then once you hear back from us, then it's your opportunity to decide. And this is where some of that looking into will come into play, right? This is where you want to start thinking about, okay, where can I feasibly see myself? If I go to this school, how easy will it be for me to travel home? You might want to think about, how is the school going to help me achieve my goals? What does the student life experience look like? What does social life experience look like? How do I shadow a class, perhaps? This is where you start making some of those last second observations and reach out to all the people you want to talk to and really help make those last minute, get those answers to those last minute questions. Don't leave any stone unturned. Ask all of your questions. I promise you, admissions counselors are in this job, not for the money, I promise you, because they don't pay well, but we do this job because we love this job and we love working with students and we love to be here to answer your questions and love to be able to support you in this process. We're not scary people. I think there's a common misconception that we're always looking for reasons to throw your application out, and I promise you that's not the case. I want you to be here just as much as you want yourself to be here, right? You took the time to submit that application, and I want to honor that to the best of my ability. And so reach out, ask those questions. We can't look at your essay for you ahead of time. That wouldn't be fair, but if you've got questions about something, about the college or what the student experience is like, or what classroom experience is like, or the international experience, reach out to me, reach out to any of the other admissions counselors at the colleges that you're looking at. I will be the first person to tell you, if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to make something up. I will either try and find someone who knows the answer, or I'll try to connect you with the person or the office that knows the answer. So we make sure we get that for you. That being said, that's everything that I have to present. There is some contact information there. So if you have any questions, you can email me right there. It's intl.adm, so that's international.admission, at reed.edu. You can also email our general email inbox if you'd like, but I would suggest just emailing me directly if you have questions. If you're looking to connect with a current student and sort of talk about what that experience is like at Reed, we have an inbox called Write a Reading at reed.edu. This is an inbox that's managed by all of our senior student interns. And these interns are managing the box every single day. And so if you want to talk to a current living, breathing Reed student and ask them what their experience was like, or what, ask questions about a specific major, you could definitely do that as well. We have about 4 international students that work in our office. So any 4 of them can talk to you about what that transition looked like for them. If you've got some more specific questions about financial aid, especially if it's like a specific situation that you're dealing with, or questions about like your specific tax documents or whatever it might look like, you can reach out to financial aid directly. So it's financial.aid@reed.edu. I know financial aid in a broad spectrum, but sometimes when those questions get a little bit more specific, I'm not always quite sure how to answer those since I don't normally work with financial aid, but any broad questions I'm always happy to chat about. That being said, what questions do you have? Feel free to put them in the chat box. I see one has come through already. And feel free to keep them coming, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions. So let's see here. Francis, you asked, for international students with high need, do you advise applying early decision or regular decision? That's a fantastic question. If you're looking for a considerable amount of financial aid, which first of all is okay, that's totally fine. Everyone's need is going to look different, right? I had a zero, well, let me back up. How the financial aid at Reed works is you will submit the CSS profile. And then what we will do is once we have that information, we will calculate something called your EFC. This is your expected family contribution. So the expected family contribution is essentially this number that we've determined based on your family's financial situation. And this is how much your family can afford to spend on your education based on your family's financial situation. And that number is going to look different from person to person. One family may be able to afford $10,000 a year. Another family may be able to afford $50,000 a year. Maybe some of your families have a zero EFC. You can't afford anything for college. That's what my EFC was. I was lucky enough to get some grants and scholarships to pay for my education. And that's okay too, right? What we're just trying to understand is what your financial situation looks like. And then what we do is we calculate a financial aid award package or an award letter. Colleges call them different things. Reed meets 100% demonstrated need for every single admitted student. International, domestic, transfer, first year, it does not matter. So what does that mean? So let's say, just use some numbers. Let's say your family can afford to spend $10,000 a year on your education. The full cost of attendance at Reed is about $75,000 a year. That's including tuition, books and supplies, room and board, an estimate all the way down to laundry detergent. Well, that means there's a $65,000 gap between what your expected family contribution is and what the full cost of attendance is. Reed will cover that at 100%. Now, how do we cover that? So a majority of that gap is covered through grants. That's money that you do not have to pay back. That's money that the college is giving you to pay for your education. There might be a little bit of work study in there. So work studies where we give you a job on campus, usually no more than 5 to 10 hours a week, where you're working a part-time in one of the academic offices. Maybe you're applying, or maybe you're working in the admissions office, the library, the bookstore, the athletic center. Working in one of these offices, and you're earning a paycheck just like normal, and that paycheck can be used to buy your books and supplies, or put towards your housing, or put towards food. It's really whatever you want to use it for. So that is how work study works. There might be some chunk of student loan in there as well, depending on what your level of need is. We keep loans at a bare minimum here at Reed. As a matter of fact, Reed students have the lowest amount of student loan debt out of any school in the entire Pacific Northwest. We're top 3 on the West Coast and top 10 in the US for the lowest amount of student loan debt. Just to give you an example, your maximum loan freshman year, your first year, is $4,000. Sounds like a little bit of a high number, but in the grand scheme of loans where people are taking hundreds of thousands of dollars out, $4,000 is a very small number. So we don't want you to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt. We want you to have a little bit of skin in the game. Statistics show that students that have that skin in the game tend to perform out better than their peers who aren't paying for anything out of pocket. But we're not trying to make you go into like tons and tons and tons of debt, right? Or some combination of those three are going to make up your financial aid package. So that's what we mean when we say it meets at 100%. So that being said, to answer the original question, I realize it was a very long answer. If you're looking for more financial aid, like if your financial need is pretty high, I always recommend applying early. Early decision, early action, whichever one works for you. I recognize that sometimes making applying early decision is a big commitment, especially because you're applying without knowing what your financial aid package is going to look like. But that's the loophole. Once you've applied to early decision and you get your decision back from us, let's say we admit you, You then get your financial aid package a week later. If that financial aid package does not work for you, that is the one loophole to withdraw from your early decision agreement, is if the financial aid doesn't work for you. Now, first you'll have to go through an appeal process. So if the financial aid package doesn't work for you, you'll go through an appeal process. Financial aid will re-review your documents to see if maybe they made a mistake in there. And if they didn't, and the outcome is still the same and it still doesn't work for you, then you're welcome to contact me directly and say, Dev, I'd like to withdraw from my early decision agreement. I've already gone through the appeal process. I'll verify that and then let you withdraw from that agreement. Early action, remember there's no agreement, but you can still apply it early, still get that early response back. No commitment. That's a great way to still get the most of financial aid. We admit 2/3 of our entire incoming class between early action and early decision. That's also where the bulk of our financial aid is. By the time we get to regular decision, it becomes very competitive for financial aid. And so at that point, like you've got to be with some of the best students in order for, especially if you're looking for a considerable amount of financial aid, for us to be able to have that aid to support you. I love working for a college that thinks equity first, and that's why we have this financial aid model, is we want to be able to support students who may not be able to afford tuition like Reed, and offer it to be as equitable as possible for students. But you definitely want to take advantage of that process. You definitely want to apply sooner if you're able to. Great question, Francis. I apologize for that very long answer, but I hope that answered it. How do we submit English proficiency exams? Great question. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. We prefer them to be submitted officially. So if you take it through Duolingo, have your scores officially sent to Reed through Duolingo. So you'll put Reed into the sending school and Duolingo will send it to us directly, for example. Your guidance counselor or school teacher or principal or whoever at your school that you're working with, they can send your scores on your behalf and we'll still count that as official. If you send your scores to us directly, we call that self-reporting and unofficial. That's fine, we allow self-reporting, but eventually if you do get admitted, we will then require the official scores. So just to save you time later down the road, I always recommend sending in those official scores, but that's up to you. I also recognize I think there's a cost to send your scores to schools. If that cost is a burden, either have your counselor do it for free or self-report your scores. And then, like I said, we'll just ask you to submit the official scores if you're admitted. Does Reed accept ISFAA? Unfortunately, we don't accept the ISFAA at this time. If the cost of the CSS profile is a burden, we have a fee waiver option. What you'll need to do first in order to request that fee waiver is first submit your Reed College application, then wait 24 hours for it to process in our system, and then send financial aid an email requesting that fee waiver, and they'll let you know what that process looks like. For IB students who have completed the program, will our IB grades, or will our IB exam grades be considered an admission? Yeah, that's a fantastic question. We love to see students taking challenging classes and love to see how you're preparing yourself for a rigorous curriculum like Reed. And so yes, we love to see those IB scores. We love to see AP scores. If we also recognize not all those schools offer those exam score or those programs, and that's okay too. I'm not going to compare Diego and Philip to each other if they went to different schools. I might compare Philip to the other students that are coming from his school and then Diego from their school, but I wouldn't compare the two of you because you have different schools with different processes. Now, those exam scores will come into play if you're looking to receive credit, class credit for those classes. So for example, let's say you took IB biology, we might be able to offer you biology credit at Reed. So that's less credits that you have to take at at the college. Those are the credits you don't have to pay for then. Now every program, every college does IB awarding, credit awarding very different. So make sure you check with each school you're looking at. At Reed, every single department manages their credit evaluation differently. Um, at Reed, the general consensus is it has to be for an HL class. We don't give credit for SL classes. And you have to have gotten a 5 or above on your IB scores, 4 and above for your AP scores for you to be awarded credit. We do need the official score report to be sent to Reed. And then over the summer, once you're admitted, the registrar's office will take a look at your transcripts. They'll take a look at those IB scores, and then they will automatically apply them to your Reed transcript. There's nothing you have to do other than send us those official scores. Let's say you didn't do IB exams because they didn't happen at your school or your country, or you just didn't do them for whatever reason. That's okay too. Again, we love to see you taking challenging classes. If you didn't test, that's fine too. The fact that you took those IB classes is still awesome. And I'd love to see how students are challenging themselves in high school. So no pressure if you didn't take those exams. Cool, yeah, awesome. Yeah, you're all welcome. We have a little bit more time. Okay, here we go. How much does demonstrated need play into getting a student accepted? How are extracurricular activities weighed on an application? How much does demonstrated need play? Okay, got it. So I'm assuming, Philip, you're referring to financial aid need. So in that case, like I was talking about earlier, this is just one puzzle piece, right? Your financial aid situation is just one factor of the entire application process that we look at. Unfortunately, we tend to get more students that apply. Not unfortunately, I said that weird. Let me back up. We tend to get a lot more applications for students who need a lot more financial aid. Unfortunately, I can't admit everybody, right? We have to make some decisions here and there. And that's where applying early comes in handy, is because I can be a little bit more flexible during those early rounds versus that regular decision round. But even an early decision and early action, I can't admit every high need student. And so that's where the rest of your application is just as important, right? Those essays are going to be just as important. Your grades are going to be just as important. Your recommendation letters are going to be just as important. And that's why we do holistic review, because each of these things are really, really important to contributing to the idea of who you are as a whole student. Because we recognize as a college, not one of these things defines you as a person. Your grades does not define you as who you are as a person. Your recommendation letters does not define who you are as a person. Your activities list does not define you. These are all just individual pieces about a whole you. And that's what we're assessing, is what is that whole you? And that's where that financial aid piece comes into play. Is that's just another piece of the whole you. And we're going to do our best to be able to support that. I also forgot to mention, I tend to forget this piece. If you've earned any kind of external scholarships, you're welcome to bring those into Reed as well. Scholarships will first replace work study, and then it'll replace any loans before it even touches your grants. So we don't take away grant dollars first. That's money that we're giving to you. We'll take away student work first. That way you don't have to have a job while you're on campus. You still can if you want, but you don't have to. And then we'll take away those loans. How are extracurriculars weight on an application? Yeah, so similar response, like we're not looking for specific extracurriculars. We're just trying to get an idea of what do you do in your time, right? Like, are you doing clubs and activities? Sometimes clubs and activities is a privilege that we don't have because we have to, go home after school and take care of a younger sibling or an older parent or a grandparent. That's an activity. We want to know that as well. Or maybe you are like me and you had to work after school to help pay the bills. That's an activity as well. We want to know that information as well. I would rather students be involved in only 2 or 3 clubs than 50 clubs, but be able to successfully tell me what they do in those clubs. I can't tell you how many times I've seen applications where students are like, I'm the president of all these 10 different clubs. But then when I ask them about, well, what did you guys do in that club? They can't really tell me, like, they didn't do a lot. And that doesn't do anyone any good, right? You haven't been building community that way. What is the point of doing it if you're not going to do anything, even if you're the president or even if you're the vice president? I'd rather you be a great member than a mediocre leader. You know what I mean? So, you know, clubs and activities are great. What are you doing? What kind of clubs and activities? If you've done like research or something academic, like I know a lot of students will do like summer programs. That's cool stuff to put in your activities list, and we love to see that. What else could you potentially put there? You know, sometimes if you are doing like side research on your own, that's some cool stuff to put in there. So, you know, we're just trying to get an idea of what it is that where you're filling your time with. What that is up to you, right? Like whatever you enjoy doing, do it. Community service, that's another one I couldn't think of for a second. Sometimes people just will go out in the community and volunteer. That's awesome. Fill your time however you want. We just want to know how is it that you're filling your time. Demonstrated interest is also something that Reed looks at. Again, that's different from college to college, but we do look at demonstrated interest. Applying early decision is the #1 way to show demonstrated interest. But you know, attending sessions like this is a great way to show demonstrated interest. Once you all logged in, your individual student profiles in our system makes a note that you attended this session. If you attend any of our info sessions or our you know, virtual campus tours, these are all great ways to show demonstrated interest. You don't have to do all of these in order to show demonstrated interest, right? I think sometimes students feel this pressure that they have to go to every single thing, and you definitely don't. 1 or 2 things is totally fine. Attend what you think is going to be helpful to you. I would rather you do that than waste your time attending every single event, even if it's not going to benefit you. So yeah, that's where, and then again, sound like a broken record, but your demonstrated interest, that's just one puzzle piece, right, to the whole picture. I plan to apply regular decision, but will not have any of my grade 12 marks by that point. Would this be an issue? No, not at all. We recognize especially like international students, sometimes y'all are on different timelines and calendars than the US. So we're used to that. That's not a problem. A lot of schools will have your first semester grades ready by the time you apply regular decision, or maybe a month after you've applied regular decision. If that's the case for you, then we'll ask you to submit those scores. We call that the mid-year report. It's basically what your mid-year grades are. But if your school doesn't have those ready by then, that's okay too. We'll assess your application using some of your other transcripts. So we do ask for year 9, year 10, and year 11, whatever those equivalence classes are. I recognize for some of your countries, high school is not year 9. High school starts in year 10. We will still ask for year 9 because year 9 is the equivalent to your first year of high school in the US. And so that gives us 3 years worth of data to look at. We will eventually ask you for your your final transcripts once they're ready. Even if you're admitted without submitting your final transcripts, you will still need to submit those transcripts once those grades are ready. Your admission to Reed is contingent upon successfully finishing your senior year. And it's happened before where students have done really, really great, you know, those first 3 years, and they got an admission and they were like, great, I don't have to worry about school anymore. And their grades took a rapid decline their last year. And then we've had to rescind that admission from students. So as long as, you know, your grades are consistent in all of those 4 years, you should be fine. But we will ask for those final transcripts once those are available. Great, we have about 9 more minutes. Anything else that I can answer for anyone? All right. Well, oh, Diego, great question. How are international students welcomed at Reed? Fantastic question. So international students make up about 12% of our population. International students actually start first at the beginning of the school year before any other students move to campus. So you will all come to campus first, and you'll have the entire campus to yourself for about 3 or 4 days before the rest of the first year students move in. And then you'll have a week with the rest of the first year students before the rest of the sophomore, juniors, and seniors move into campus. So those first few days of international orientation is, some of it's like the boring, like here's the paperwork, here's, how to maintain your visa and not get deported. Here, those are some of those like more paperwork stuff. But then we also do tons of fun stuff. We want you to start getting to know each other. We plan events and games and activities for you all to get to know each other and start building community. Community is something that's huge at Reed. We want you to start building those relationships. We want you to start getting to know each other. And so that's why we do that, is we plan all these events and activities for you to start to get to know each other. We also have a really great program called Explore PDX. So PDX is the Portland Airport code. It's also the nickname for Portland. A lot of people call Portland PDX. It's just this quirky thing about Portland. And so Explore PDX is a program for international students where every evening, I think it's every evening for those first 3 or 4 days, we'll load you all onto a school bus and we'll take you to downtown, or we'll take you to Powell's bookstore, which is the largest bookstore in the entire US, I believe. Or we'll take you to explore Woodstock neighborhood, which has a bunch of fun restaurants and coffee shops and mom and pop shops. So we'll get you to explore Portland as well as the campus. In general, Reed has such a welcoming community. We've got students from all kinds of identities and backgrounds, both domestic and international, that come to Reed because this campus is so incredibly welcoming of students from all kinds of backgrounds. Portland too. Portland is a pretty welcoming city. It is a city that has always been fairly liberal and fairly welcoming, and there are, it's not uncommon to see all kinds of celebrations that are happening both on campus and off campus for a variety of, cultural events. So I think that's what I've always appreciated about Reed. It's just sort of that welcoming community. And that's not just like students. I mean, we're talking about faculty, we're talking about staff. We're often talking about how do we remove barriers for students? How do we make this campus as anti-racist as possible? How do we make this campus welcoming for students with disabilities, or queer students, or whatever other type of identity that you have? How do we make this place someplace that everyone can thrive and be their authentic self? And that's what I've always appreciated about the college. I hope that answers your question, Diego. Let me know if you need clarification. International resources, yeah, for sure. So ISS, it's International Student Services, they plan a lot for students. So that Explore PDX thing that I was talking about, and some of the other programs I was talking about, is all hosted through ISS. And so they do a lot to help students sort of navigate that process from wherever they're coming from, whatever countries they're coming from, into Reed. They'll work with you to help you register for classes, or talk about like they do a great class on cultural differences in the US versus like whatever country you're coming from, right? So like, how does like public bus etiquette work in the US? Which is a weird thing to think about, because if you've never taken public transportation in the US, it works very differently than overseas. So what are those basic things look like? There's also a mentorship program. What is it called? I think it's called Peer Mentors. And basically, these are other international students who have been at Reed for 2, 3, 4 years. Probably not 4 years, but 2 or 3 years. And they will be sort of your mentor or your buddy throughout your entire time while you're at Reed. So it's this person who's already had to experience Reed, who's had to go through the awkwardness of being a new student. And they sort of help you navigate that and try to make that transition easier for you. If any of you are interested in being peer mentors during your second, third, or fourth year, that's a great opportunity to take all the things that you've learned and pass it on to people who are coming after you. Then we have oh my gosh, what is it called? The host program. The host program is currently on pause because of COVID, but this is probably one of our most popular programs. And basically what it is there are several families in the Portland community that will host an international student or a couple international students. And basically what it is, you don't live at their house like a traditional host program, but instead you are like an extension, they're an extension of your family, but here in Portland. They'll invite you to dinner a couple of nights a week, or if they're gonna all go see a movie, they might call you up and say, hey, we're gonna go see a movie, do you wanna come with us? Or if they're gonna go to like the coast or to the beach, they might call you up and say, hey, we're gonna go to the beach, do you wanna come with us? So it's just like a family that you have in Portland that are properly well vetted. We're not giving you random strangers that we've never met before. These are well vetted families. Many of these families come back year after year to host students and sort of take you under their wings and sort of welcome you into Portland. That doesn't even include like mental health support, physical health support, the writing center, the tutoring center. So there's all those additional support services as well. Housing, housing is required for all first year and second year students. Your last 2 years is optional. You can choose to live on campus or off campus, that's up to you. But in order to do housing, you'll submit an application. And then there's a couple of ways that housing can work. A lot of our dorms are single person rooms, so it's just you by yourself in a room. We have a good handful of doubles, and then a smaller chunk of triples. So a double is where you're sharing with one other person, and a triple is where you're sharing with 2 other people. So if you have a preference, sometimes students want that traditional college experience, have a roommate, the whole thing. And sometimes students are like, don't give me a roommate, I want my own space. I don't want anyone else in my room. We got options. And then, so if you have a preference, you can indicate that in your application. If there's somebody that you'd like to room with, so let's say we do a lot of like virtual events to get you to meet each other over the summer. And so if you meet somebody like over Facebook or during the virtual events, and you both click and you want to room together, you can both indicate each other on the housing application. Let's say you want a roommate, but there's no one specific you want to room with. You can do a survey, and this survey asks you questions like, are you messy? Are you clean? Do you like to wake up early in the morning, or do you like to sleep in late? Are you loud? Are you quiet? Whatever. And then they'll pair somebody up who has a similar profile like you. That way you would, hopefully get along a lot better. Cool. Is there a transportation service, public transportation for students to leave campus? Absolutely, yeah. So Portland has a really great public transportation system called TriMet. There's multiple bus stops on the campus, and they can get you anywhere you want to go in the entire metro area. There's an app, you just put in like Reed's address, and then you put in the address of where you want to go, and I'll tell you what bus to take. If you have to do a bus transfer, so get off at one bus and get onto a different bus, and I'll tell you when to do that and where to do that. You can buy your bus pass right on the app. Students at Reed get a discounted bus pass as well, so you don't have to pay for the full price, which I highly recommend. So yeah, that's how most students get around. If you choose to purchase a car and you've got a car, you're welcome to bring your car to Reed. Any student can have a car at Reed. It's free to park. You can park anywhere. But otherwise, public transportation is really easy to navigate. We're also the most bike-friendly city in the entire US. And so a lot of people bike around on their bikes. So that might be something you might be interested in doing, depending on if like to be outside and like to bike. Um, that might be something that's interesting. Awesome, great. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Diego, you attended a virtual campus tour. The housing halls look stunning. That's awesome to hear. We also have some really great videos on the Reed YouTube page of like room tours. And there's all kinds of buildings that students have done room tours in. So you can check out all of those videos on our YouTube page. But that being said, thank you all so much for joining me. I'll share my screen one more time with the contact info, just in case you did not get that. But there's that contact info again. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was beneficial, and that y'all got something out of it. If you do have questions, again, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer questions. I promise you, you're not bothering me. I get that question. I get that all the time where people think, oh, I don't want to bother you. That's never the case. I love to answer students' questions and help make this process as easy as can be. So if you do have questions or concerns, always reach out. I'm always happy to chat. Awesome. So I'm going to keep that contact open. One more second. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for joining and have a great day.